The sky was calm that evening. No storms, no warning signs. Just two airplanes, full of people, trusting the air above them to be safe. Families were laughing, crew members were focused, and nobody, not a single soul, knew that in just a few minutes the sky itself would turn into a grave. This wasn't a mechanical failure. It wasn't terrorism. It wasn't a bomb or bad weather. It was silence, confusion, and one fatal misunderstanding. What happened next would shock the world, change aviation forever, and leave behind a question that still hurts to ask. How could so many lives be lost when everything looked normal? This is not just the story of a crash. This is the story of human limits, broken systems, and the deadliest mid-air collision the world has ever seen. It all began in the late 1990s, a time when aviation was growing faster than safety systems could keep up. India's airspace was getting busier every year, but its technology was still catching its breath. Airports were crowded. Air traffic controllers were overworked. Radar systems could tell where a plane was, but not always how high it was flying. That gap, small on paper, was massive in the sky. On one side was a Saudi Arabian Airlines Boeing 747, a giant of the air, carrying pilgrims returning home after a sacred journey. Elderly passengers whispered prayers. Families felt relief. The hardest part of their journey was over. On the other side was a Kazakhstan Airlines Ilyushin 76 cargo plane, heavy, old, and flying with a crew that didn't speak fluent English. Their job was technical, quiet, and routine. For them, this was just another flight. But here's the twist. Both planes were about to share the same invisible road in the sky. They were moving toward each other on the same flight path, guided by the same air traffic control center. One controller, one voice, too many responsibilities. The rules were simple. Keep the planes at different altitudes so they never meet. That separation was the only thing standing between life and death. The Saudi jet was climbing steadily, following instructions perfectly. The Kazakh aircraft was descending, relying on translations and delayed communication. Inside that cockpit, English words had to be converted into Russian, then understood, then acted upon. Every second mattered, every word mattered, but time was slipping through their fingers. Then something went wrong. The Kazakh crew reported they had reached the assigned altitude, but they hadn't. They were still descending. Maybe the message was misunderstood. Maybe the command wasn't clear enough. Maybe the pressure inside the cockpit blurred judgment. No alarm screamed. No warnings flashed. The radar didn't show altitude accurately, and the controller, trusting the report, believed everything was under control. But it wasn't. The two aircraft were now flying directly toward each other, separated by nothing but air and a fatal mistake. What nobody expected was how quickly normal turns into nightmare. In less than a minute, the distance between the planes collapsed. The Saudi pilots saw something ahead, too close, too fast. There was no time to maneuver, no chance to escape. The collision was violent, unforgiving, and absolute. Metal tore through metal. Wings were sliced apart like paper. One aircraft spun out of control, breaking in mid-air. The other plunged straight down, engulfed in flames. Debris rained from the sky. Fire lit up the horizon. Villages below watched in horror as pieces of aircraft fell like burning stars. In seconds, 349 lives were erased. No survivors, no last messages, just silence. The wreckage was scattered across fields and villages. Families ran toward the smoke, not knowing what they would find. Rescue teams arrived, but there was nothing to rescue. Bodies were unrecognizable. Personal belongings lay buried in the dirt. Passports, shoes, toys. The ground told a story too painful to hear. News spread across the world within hours. Headlines screamed, screams filled with images of destruction. People asked the same question again and again. How could two planes collide in open sky? The investigation peeled back layer after layer of failure. It wasn't one person's fault. It was many small cracks lining up perfectly. The air traffic controller was managing too many flights alone. The radar system couldn't show altitude. The separation distance was too small for safety. The Kazakh crew struggled with English, relying on translation instead of direct understanding. The cockpit culture discouraged questioning authority. Even when something felt wrong, nobody challenged it. And above all, there was no automated collision avoidance system to step in when humans failed. That absence would haunt the industry forever. Families of the victims were left with nothing but grief and unanswered questions. Pilgrims who never made it home, crew members who never returned to duty, children who would grow up without parents, spouses who waited at airports that night, staring at arrival boards that never changed. Funerals happened across countries, cultures, and religions. The pain didn't belong to one nation, it belonged to the world. Careers were destroyed, reputations shattered. Courts argued over responsibility, but no punishment could bring back the dead. No apology could undo the damage. What remained was a deep realization: aviation had trusted humans too much and technology too little. And that realization changed everything. In the aftermath, global aviation authorities rewrote the rules. Collision avoidance systems became mandatory on commercial aircraft worldwide. Pilots were required to understand and speak English clearly, no exceptions. Radar systems were upgraded to show precise altitude. Controllers received better training, better staffing, and better tools. Procedures were tightened, margins were widened. The sky became safer, but only because hundreds of lives had paid the price. But here's the hardest truth: those changes came too late for the people on those planes. The worst mid-air crash in aviation history wasn't caused by chaos. It was caused by routine, by normal decisions, by trust in systems that weren't ready. And that's what makes it terrifying, because it reminds us that disasters don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they arrive quietly, hiding inside everyday moments, waiting for one small mistake to open the door. Today, planes cross paths safely every minute. Technology watches constantly. Alerts speak when humans hesitate. But behind every safety rule is a name, a face, a life that was lost. The sky learned its lesson the hard way. And as passengers, as travelers, as people who look up at airplanes and feel comfort instead of fear, we owe those lives something important. We owe them remembrance, because their final journey made sure millions of others would arrive safely. The sky may look peaceful now, but it remembers everything, and so should we.